At 7:42 a.m. on the 6th of March 1945, the streets of Cologne were silent in the way only a ruined city can be. Smoke clung to shattered buildings. Broken stone choked the intersections. Inside the turret of a heavy American tank, Corporal Clarence Smoyer pressed his eye against the gun sight and watched a German Panther rotate its long barrel toward an unseen target. Seconds earlier, two American Sherman tanks had rolled into a nearby intersection. The Panther fired twice. Both rounds punched through the Sherman's gun shield within inches of each other. 3 men died instantly. Another tried to escape with his leg torn away. The battle for Cologne had already decided what kind of morning this would be. Smoyer was 21 years old. He had grown up in rural Pennsylvania. The son of a coal miner. He had never been in a fistfight. He had hunted once and felt sick afterward. Now he sat behind the 90mm gun of the M26 Pershing, America's newest and most powerful tank, watching another crew burn 2 streets away. By early 1945, thousands of Shermans had been destroyed by German guns. The problem was no longer theoretical. It was written in steel wreckage and empty hatches across Europe. So why had this moment taken 3 years to arrive? And what would happen when America's long-delayed answer finally met a German Panther in the shadow of Cologne Cathedral? By the winter of 1944, the weakness of the American Sherman tank was no longer a matter of debate among the men who fought inside it. On paper, the Sherman was reliable, easy to manufacture, and mechanically sound. On the battlefield, it was outmatched. German Panther and Tiger tanks outweighed it, outgunned it, and outranged it. Their 75mm and 88mm guns could penetrate Sherman armor long before American crews could respond effectively. Crew survival statistics told the real story. When a Sherman was hit, its ammunition often ignited within seconds. Escape was a race against fire. Many crews never made it out. During the Battle of the Bulge in December 1944, entire American tank companies were gutted in single engagements. Panthers destroyed Shermans from distances where American rounds bounced harmlessly off German steel. Courage was not the problem. Equipment was. The warning signs had been visible since Normandy. Yet for years, American armored doctrine resisted change. Army Ground Forces Command, led by Lieutenant General Leslie McNair, argued that tanks were not meant to fight other tanks. Shermans, they insisted, existed to support infantry. Enemy armor would be handled by specialized tank destroyer units. It was a clean theory. The battlefield did not cooperate. German doctrine was brutally simple. Tanks fought tanks, and German crews trained accordingly. As early as 1942, the U.S. Ordnance Department had begun developing a heavier vehicle. The T-26 program produced a series of experimental tanks, each iteration adding thicker armor, a more powerful gun, and improved suspension. Each version also added weight, complexity, and logistical challenges. Again and again, proposals were rejected. The Sherman worked well enough in North Africa, commanders argued. Why disrupt production during a global war? By 1944, that logic was killing American tankers. The Ardennes offensive changed everything. When hundreds of German tanks smashed into Allied lines in December, the limitations of the Sherman were exposed beyond denial. After the Bulge, no senior officer could credibly claim that existing equipment was sufficient. In January 1945, the decision finally came. 20 T-26E, 3 heavy tanks soon redesignated the M26 Pershing, arrived at the port of Antwerp. General Omar Bradley ordered them divided between 2 veteran formations, 10 to the 3rd Armored Division and 10 to the 9th. The tanks moved east to a maintenance facility near Aachen, where division commanders selected their best crews. The Pershing felt familiar but different. Its controls resembled the Sherman's, but its transmission behaved differently under load. The real change was the gun. The 90mm cannon produced a violent concussion, a sharper recoil, and a sound that rattled teeth even through padded headsets. Clarence Smoyer remembered the first live-fire test. A farmhouse stood more than a mile downrange. Major General Maurice Rose, commander of the 3rd Armored Division, ordered the chimney destroyed and stood barely 20 feet behind the tank. When Smoyer fired, the muzzle blast flattened Rose and his staff. The chimney vanished in fragments. Rose stood, brushed off his uniform, and smiled. The Pershing was approved for combat. Within weeks, it would be tested not on a range, but in the shattered streets of Cologne. By early March 1945, the 3rd Armored Division was pushing toward the Rhine. In its path stood Cologne, Germany's 4th largest city and one of its most important industrial centers. What remained of it barely resembled a city at all. After 262 Allied bombing raids, entire neighborhoods had collapsed into fields of rubble. Smoke drifted constantly through broken streets. Only one structure still dominated the skyline. The twin spires of Cologne Cathedral, rising intact above the destruction like a marker for both armies. Urban combat stripped armored warfare down to its most dangerous form. Streets became narrow corridors. Basements connected by underground passages allowed German infantry to appear behind American lines and vanish again. Snipers fired from factory smokestacks and church towers. Anti-tank teams waited in silence until vehicles passed, then struck thin rear armor at point-blank range. In this environment, even a powerful tank could die in seconds. On the morning of March 6, Clarence Smoyer's crew received their orders. Their M26 Pershing, one of only 20 in all of Europe, would lead the advance into the city center. Wherever the streets opened into intersections, Eagle 7 would go first. Wherever German guns waited, Eagle 7 would draw their fire. Major General Maurice Rose had personally selected the crew. It was meant as recognition. It felt like a sentence. At 0800 hours, the Pershing rolled forward. Staff Sergeant Robert Early commanded from the turret. Smoyer manned the main gun. The crew had fought together since Normandy, surviving hedgerows, snow, and ambushes in a Sherman. They had received the Pershing only weeks earlier. Now they trusted it with their lives. As Eagle 7 moved deeper into Cologne, the city closed in around them. 3-story apartment blocks lay collapsed across the streets. Tram lines twisted into the air like broken vines. Every 40 yards, the tank stopped while the driver checked for mines or hidden obstacles. The smell of smoke seeped through the ventilation system, mixed with something worse. German resistance was uneven. Many Wehrmacht units had already withdrawn across the Rhine, leaving demolition teams behind to destroy bridges. Those who remained were rear guard volunteers, determined to delay the Americans as long as possible. For 4 days, U.S. infantry had fought house to house. Progress was measured in blocks, not miles. As Eagle 7 approached the Cathedral district, the danger increased. Wider streets offered longer sightlines. Longer sightlines meant German gunners had more time to aim. At 9:15, the radio crackled with new orders. German tanks were operating near Cathedral Square. At least 2 Panthers had been confirmed. American infantry had taken casualties and pulled back. 2 Sherman tanks from F Company were already probing the area. They advanced without infantry support, a deadly gamble forced by circumstance. Within minutes, tank gunfire echoed through the streets. One Sherman was hit. Its crew began bailing out under fire. A second tank was engaged. The German firing position remained unseen. Eagle 7 was now the only American tank in position to respond. The Pershing continued forward, its engine rumbling between the ruins. Ahead, the cathedral spires filled the vision blocks. Somewhere near that square, a German Panther waited, its crew already responsible for killing American tankers that morning. For the first time, the M26 Pershing was about to face a Panther in direct combat. Staff Sergeant Robert Early did not rush the Pershing forward. Charging blindly into Cathedral Square would have been suicide. The German tank had already demonstrated disciplined gunnery and a clear field of fire. Instead, Early made a dangerous but necessary choice. He would leave the safety of the turret and reconnoiter on foot. With him went Technical Sergeant Jim Bates of the U.S. Army Signal Corps, a combat cameraman who had followed the 3rd Armored Division since Normandy. Bates had already filmed the destruction of the Sherman tanks near the cathedral. Now he sensed something larger unfolding. An American heavy tank facing a German Panther in the heart of Cologne was a moment worth recording. From a corner overlooking the square, Early spotted the Panther. It sat partially concealed near a side street, its gun trained down the avenue the Shermans had used. The position was textbook: excellent fields of fire, limited exposure, and full control of the approaches. Any American tank entering the square from the north would show its side armor and die quickly. But the Panther had one weakness. Its turret faced north. A parallel street offered a chance. If Eagle 7 could loop around the block and enter the square from the west, the Pershing would appear on the Panther's flank. Turret rotation took time, only seconds. But sometimes, seconds were everything. Early returned to the tank and explained the plan. The crew understood immediately. This would be a single, violent exchange. Whoever fired first, accurately, would survive. At 9:58, Eagle 7 entered the narrow side street. The Pershing's 46 tons scraped past rubble and cratered pavement. The engine noise echoed between the walls, impossible to hide. Somewhere ahead, the Panther crew would hear it. Smoyer rotated the turret 90 degrees to the right, anticipating the moment they would break into the open. As the Pershing reached the intersection, the cathedral square exploded into view. The Panther was there about 110 yards away. Its turret was already moving. The German crew had reacted faster than expected. Private William McVeigh made a split-second decision. He did not stop. A stationary tank was an easy target. Instead, he accelerated, carrying Eagle 7 into the intersection while still moving. The Pershing crossed the Panther's line of fire just as its gun swung toward them. American tanks were rarely fired on the move. The gun was not stabilized. Accuracy suffered. But waiting meant death. Smoyer squeezed the trigger. At 9:59 and 12 seconds, the 90mm round struck the Panther high on the turret. Sparks and fragments erupted, but the tank remained functional. Durigi slammed another armor-piercing round into the breach as McVeigh brought Eagle 7 to a halt, fully exposed in the open square. Smoyer adjusted his aim lower, targeting the thinner side armor beneath the turret ring. He fired again at 9:59 and 17 seconds. The round punched clean through the Panther, tearing through the fighting compartment and exiting the far side. Inside, hydraulics ruptured and ammunition ignited. A third shot followed seconds later. Flames erupted from the turret. The Panther was finished. The entire engagement lasted less than 45 seconds. From a second-story window, Jim Bates kept his camera running. He captured everything: the Pershing's advance, the rotating German gun, the muzzle flashes, and the Panther burning in front of Cologne Cathedral. The footage would become one of the most famous tank duels of the war, but the consequences reached beyond victory. As American infantry moved forward, Eagle 7 encountered another threat hours later, a hidden Panzer IV. When the German tank withdrew behind a damaged building, Smoyer made a brutal decision. He fired a high-explosive round into the structure itself. The building collapsed inward, burying the tank beneath tons of rubble. The street fell silent again. Cologne was not yet secured, but the balance had shifted. The Pershing had proven that American armor could finally meet German tanks on equal terms. The cost, however, would linger long after the smoke cleared. The duel at Cologne Cathedral was more than a dramatic battlefield moment. It marked a turning point in how the United States understood armored warfare. For years, American doctrine had insisted that tanks were not meant to fight tanks. That belief collapsed in front of the cathedral spires, captured on film for the world to see. From a tactical perspective, the engagement demonstrated how narrow the margins were in urban combat. The M26 Pershing possessed thicker armor and a more powerful gun, but those advantages mattered only because of timing, positioning, and crew discipline. A few seconds of turret rotation, a driver's refusal to stop in the open, and a gunner willing to fire on the move decided the outcome. Had any one of those factors failed, the result would have been reversed. In the United States, Jim Bates's footage appeared in newsreels within weeks. Movie audiences watched the Pershing roll into the square, saw the Panther ignite, and understood perhaps for the first time what modern tank combat actually looked like. It was not clean. It was not heroic in the traditional sense. It was fast, violent, and unforgiving. The film quietly validated what American tank crews had been saying since Normandy. Equipment mattered, and delay had cost lives. Internationally, the battle carried a different weight. Cologne was not just a military objective. It was a city of civilians caught between collapsing armies. The same engagement that proved the Pershing's effectiveness also revealed the moral ambiguity of urban warfare. The black automobile that crossed Eagle 7's path was not a military vehicle. The woman who died inside it was not a soldier. Yet, in the chaos of street fighting, there was no clear line between combatant and bystander. That reality haunted Clarence Smoyer long after the war ended. Decades later, when he finally watched the footage frame by frame, victory gave way to guilt. He saw what he had not been able to see in 1945. The consequences of a split-second decision followed him for the rest of his life. From a global perspective, the Cologne engagement stands as a lesson that technology and doctrine cannot erase human cost. Heavy armor and powerful guns may change outcomes on a map, but they do not shield those who use them from memory, responsibility, or regret. The Pershing proved America could match German steel. The war proved that no one truly escaped unscarred.